I wanna just make a quick introduction
Oh yeah.
to you, Konstantin, my brother, one of our great students, former Buddhist monk,
It's actually Hindu monk.
Hindu monk.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
excuse me. Thank you for
it's all-
correcting me.
It's all good.
Former monk. Okay, just monk. Okay, yogi, and then you got into jiu-jitsu, martial arts. You became a jiu-jitsu coach and competitor, and it was really great to see you. It's really been great to see you like evolve and grow into to this complete thing. You know, from that kind of a thing to this and over the years, and it was great to see you compete in like the Jiu-Jitsu World League, you know, and you had the full what do you call it, everything I would expect from a monk, you know, to compete, to stay calm, to stay in the zone. So it's been a pleasure, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's interesting, you know. It's like I remember it's like the first when we moved to LA from Shanghai.
Shanghai.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. Put this a little bit closer. Yeah.
And in Shanghai, I tried jiu-jitsu properly. Remember we talked about that, how like, you know, it was my first gym jiu-jitsu
Did you
class.
train at that Shanghai BJJ?
Only I actually did one class. A friend of mine who trains there, he brought me in,
Okay.
and there was an Australian professor, Dan.
Dan, okay.
Dan, right? Is it what his name? I forgot his name.
There was
He-
Stan.
Stan.
He was Asian,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Was
yes.
the owner, right?
Yeah, yeah. And one of my, it's interesting, right? It was one of my first students here in LA. Helped him start the school in Shanghai, the Shanghai BJJ.
Yeah.
And then he brought me out there years later, and I got to hang out with, there was a Half Gracie student, and then Stan from Australia,
Yeah.
who was in finance, and then like he loved jujitsu.
And your friend is in Japan right now, right?
Which one?
The who helped to start.
Well,
the gym.
he's back. He's back.
He's back?
Yeah, he's a finance guy,
Yeah.
and so he moved to China to become a billionaire and all that, and then he kind of missed home and came back.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's back here,
I
back in
think
the US.
Yeah. But anyway, so
Yeah.
that was the kind of the. Actually, remember we talked about my actually first introduction was to jiu-jitsu was in South India, Mysore. I was
South India.
I was there for yoga training,
Mm.
and after I left monastery, I went to study kind of professionally yoga, and I was doing one of the trainings, and I'm one of my friends, he's like, you should come and train, and he brought me to someone's house. There was some Brazilian yogis. Rented place. They also did the training there, and the first experience of jiu-jitsu was like we go to the backyard,
Mm-hmm.
and there was like a few mattresses that they put it covered up with like with some blue tarp, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and he we followed this guy, and he kind of went into the backyard, and he bowed in the direction of the
mat.
mattresses.
Mm-hmm.
Or
The
the
mattresses.
he bowed, and then he bowed to like to the left, to the right, and bowing. It was part of culture that I was kind of growing up in India and back in Russia, but
Yeah. The monk.
I didn't see anyone that whom he's bowing. I thought like maybe spirits, maybe. I don't.
There was no pictures. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So he's like, I was like, that's interesting. He bow, and then we did the warm up, little, couple of moves, and
But you felt the spirit of it.
it was out of place. I didn't have any kind of a
Sense.
structure
Okay.
or sense what it is. It was just out of But after India, I moved to Thailand, and I was living for a few years in northern Thailand, Chiang Mai.
Chamai.
And this is when the UFC started kind of getting bigger
Bigger,
and
yeah.
bigger. So obviously I think like by then we had like some DVDs or something, and then once in a while there was UFC event, and watching martial arts and watching living in Thailand, of course, like Muay Thai there, but this is how like the first kind of introduction of jiu-jitsu started coming to my life. And like Chiang Mai, Thailand, such a transit city. There's always some martial artists come and they share their passion, but it never really brought me to the mats and study it, And but in Shanghai, I had a like a kind of sense of what it is. Like there was a proper jiu-jitsu gym, and the black belt who was teaching there, he was from Houston, Texas. And then he ended up in San Francisco. He's in a restaurant business.
That's the guy from Shanghai BJJ.
Oh,
he was the former him and Stan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember we went out partying in Shanghai, but like I was 21, 22.
No way, huh?
Like, was
okay.
20, no, I was 23 then, and a lot of things been happening, and it was really hard to commit to a new discipline until coming to to California.
What was he doing there in Thailand at the time?
No, it was in Shanghai.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But only when I came to California in 2014, I think. I was living in like a Larchmont area, and my friend from Australia who used to be a monk with me back in Mumbai, and he came, and he's a black belt now, and he's like, you live in the mecca of jiu-jitsu, you have to come. And with me first, he was training here at 10th Planet in West Hollywood gym.
West Hollywood,
but it's just never happened until we moved to Burbank, and another friend of mine who also used to be a monk with me who does jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
And he's like, you live next to the gym, you have to go, And this is how I came to first class for Marcos, actually. Sunday noon
Sundays.
class. Yeah.
Nice. Sundays. Cool. I was gonna ask you what makes a monk a monk? Because Hindu, Buddhist. What makes a monk a monk? Is it like a graduation? Do you have to do certain things?
Yes, there's a certain discipline that one thing. There's a different kinds of monks, and there's monks who commit for a short period of time, let's say 5 to 10 years, or some people go even longer, and there's some monks who commit for life commitment. But basically, what they commit to, it's a life of studying and serving to the community, right? And so, like the monks that I spend time with, their entire thing is to study and to serve the community.
Studying and serving the community.
So they become expert in texts that their particular discipline is kind of how to say it, like treasuring, right?
And what was it?
They study texts that like, let's say. For in our tradition, they study Bhagavad Gita, one of the texts, right? And so they become expert of the
like the Hindu
text, right? Like Bhagavad Gita, and they become expert of the text, and then they help in a lot other people or community members to kind of who doesn't have time as monks do, right? Like because like. For monks, they don't have a family responsibility. They don't need to worry about, jobs, 9 to 5 kind of a thing. They just, they have more time, and that gives them opportunity to educate, to help, to line up.
Go deeper into the
for people
knowledge,
who doesn't have time, right? Like for people who have 9 to 5 jobs and kids and all of it, right? And
So Hindu, you're studying the Hindu texts, and Buddhist, you're studying the Buddhist texts.
Yes,
But essentially, it's the same, right? If you're a monk, a Buddhist monk
yeah,
versus a Hindu.
essentially, you know, it's like basically, you know, what we did through, you know, as a living in a monastery, what we did is it's a rituals, right? Like we do rituals of connection, like rituals to, let's say, worship deities, or rituals to um, um, purifications and kind of things like that, right? And you know, so studying texts, doing rituals, and meditating, and basically between Hindu and Buddhist monks, in a way, they do the kind of the same thing, right? And in a way, the goals are different, the philosophical conclusions sometimes, you know, different, but essentially, you know, the idea is to discipline the mind, and prepare your heart so that the heart is genuine when you do reach out towards the community, right? Because, you know, like anything else, if we may, you know, if our heart not in the right place, if our mind is not in the right place, then, you know, everyone will feel it, right?
They say, right, our highest frequency is when we're authentic and we're our true selves.
Yeah,
right? Being ourselves and being true of heart.
Yeah. So in a way,
and people feel that, right, when they're
yeah. In a way, through various traditions, the monkhood life, right, it's all about, like, you know, connecting to the spirit and exhibiting qualities of spirit in the community. It's like
yeah. Could you tell your story of how you went to the monastery and that story?
Yeah.
Because you were into other things before you went into that, right?
Yeah. You know, I was growing up like in Russia, when in part of Russia, first of all, it's like, you know, this 90s, right?
90s, yeah.
Rock music came, and I remember in the fifth grade, a kid came to me, and I think it's fifth or sixth. A kid came to me and he said, "Hey, you know, do you want to come to my house and listen some, you know, some records?" And we, you know, we came to his house, and he started introducing me to different rock bands and showing, you know, like showing different music to me, and I was kind of, you know, I got infatuated by, you know, like by his passion and by his interest, and that opened up, rock music basically opened up for me a different community of people, kids who just, you know, who into arts, music, traveling, literature, and I just started hanging out with them. You know, it's like, and that made me also kind of want to explore the rock scene, you know, and travel with different bands or see different bands. But then I was like, you know, I was 12. You know, my parents would not let me go to the rock festival, and most of the festivals being like slightly away from where I'm from. So the first time,
where did you grow up?
It's a Ural Mountains, place called, you know, Perm.
How far is that from Moscow?
1,000 kilometers. Like,
wow.
1,200 kilometers actually.
Wow.
If we'll translate in miles, probably
yeah.
I can't do the math right now, but yeah, first time when I was 12, I decided to go for the rock festival after, you know, it's like a summer break, so we have a lot of time, and you know, three of us, like a couple of other friends, we just, you know, we stand on a highway and start, you know, hitchhiking. Basically, we hitchhike 200 kilometers away from where I'm from. And
you and a bunch of kids your age, like 12-year-old, 13-year-olds.
I was 12. My other friend
how
was
times
13,
have changed, huh?
And another friend was 14.
Wow.
We didn't have money. We didn't have nothing. Literally, we we just had like desire we want to go to the rock festival because
Yeah.
you know, watching on the TV, watching, you know, on DVDs, it was so inspiring.
Didn't it cost money to go into the event?
Rockfest.
Yeah.
You know, it was a 3 days event. It's called Rockline in a place called Kungur. It's also in the Ural Mountains area, and it's a camping. So you set up a camp, and
Gotcha.
and the festival was on the 5th floor of hotel. So all
Oh,
the
so everybody
bands
could watch
played
it.
on the top of the rooftop, and everyone was watching on the side hill kind of
Wow.
a thing. It was
Wow.
just a beautiful space, and
Yeah.
and it was anyway. So I really want to go to that rock festival, but on the way, we had a couple of days before that the event starts, and we decided to go a little bit further down on the railway from Perm City to Yekaterinburg. And when we landed in Ekaterinburg train station, we got caught by police. And, you know, they checked our documents, and obviously we didn't have documents. We didn't have any supervision of adults, and they took us to detention center. And detention center is like literally like a kid's prison, basically.
Yeah.
They shaved my head. They took all my piercing. It was just such a traumatic experience in a
yeah.
way. So they hold us for 2 weeks. They send it back. They send us back to closest city, where police from our city
Could pick you
came
up.
to pick us up and to deliver to our parents, basically, right?
Wow.
But that didn't make me, stop. I was already planning the next year when I was, in the school. I was 12.
Summer break.
After the summer break, the school year. If you look at my geography books, I was planning where I'm going to go next. Like the taste of like, yeah, I guess when you're a kid, you don't have a fear. Like what will happen. End of the world, things like that.
Yeah.
Like you don't really have fear, right? And so I got that taste, and I just decided to, the next year I'll make it to the rock festival. And that summer, I joined the punk community who protest against chemicals storaging. It's like I think there was like a rocket fuel storaging, and so they go into different areas. They protest against like those big companies and things like that. So that summer, I spent maybe 2-3 months just going Moscow. I hitchhiked to Moscow, St. Petersburg, and on the way back, in a place called Kiev, I got caught by police again, and they put me back to detention
Same
center,
thing?
but in a different city.
Okay.
They
They
hold
shaved
me.
your head and everything again?
This time, actually, they didn't.
Okay.
I was, it was a different station.
So how did you end up in going to, you're
So
getting to it, the
on-
monastery?
Yeah, on that, when I was traveling then, I was exposed to so many different people, different punk festivals, and different communities, and that made me even more to like hungry for just traveling, and of course like the other side of it, how the breaking heart experience of my parents, it's another side of it, but so I got back that
Like
for the school year.
your parents were, you stressed your parents out by you going everywhere and
Yeah.
leaving in the home and
My parents was going through divorce that time, so they in their like young adults, right, like in their own heads, and
yeah.
and I was hanging out with kids in the streets, so and luckily those kids are into like music, arts, and like they influence my passion a little bit, they curved my exploration in some ways.
Yeah.
But when I've turned 14, I met this group of hippies in a place called Vladimir, and I just fallen like they're like much older. they spoke differently. Like like with the kids that I hang out, they're like rough, and they there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of like I don't know. It's like there's a lot of it was just rough, And then when I met this group of hippies living in the forest outside of it's actually Nizhny Novgorod. It's just uh, not too far from Moscow, right? And I just fall in love with them. They don't wear shoes. They they speak gently with each other. They like
Yeah.
they
They were different, yeah.
vegetarians. They meditate. They study philosophy. Like the people that they attract, the thoughtful people, educated people. Just was a different vibration from them, right? And I told to kids that I was traveling with, like I'm just staying with them. So I traveled with them to a festival called Rainbow Gathering. It's like a big artsy hippie people, right? And so as I was traveling with them, they introduced me to like Bhagavad Gita, other text, and meditation, and they gave me beats, and I didn't have a concept, but I just liked them, like how
You felt
yeah, like
good,
I
yeah.
felt welcome, and I felt not judged, I felt like yeah, I just felt good around to be around them, right? And then they took me to the temple the first time when I and I saw this huge procession in a place called Vladimir. It's a procession called Rath Yatra Festival, and Rath Yatra Festival it's traditionally originated from a place in East India. It's called Jagannath Puri. It's a really ancient temple, and once a year, because they don't allow everyone to enter into the temple, but once a year they have like a big chariots. They build those chariots like it's like almost like a 3-story building, huge chariots, and once a year they take the deities of the temple, they put them on the chariots, and they kind of roll them through the streets, right? And so they duplicated kind of that festival. Now it's all over the world, but one of those festivals I attended when I was 14 years old, and when I saw it, there was so much colors. There's so much singing, mantras, and food, and just people are just like amazing. A lot of shaved people, like headed
Shaved
people,
heads.
and orange robes, and I was just everything was just attractive for my eyes, right? But what I noticed also, out of those crowds, you know, um, people bow to the senior person, and he was from India. He was like a big guru there, and they bow to him. They worship him in a way, right? And I was
A
like,
deep respect.
yeah, and I was kind of curious, like, how does it feel to bow someone like the way how they do? And they do this full like obeisance, either like prostrated obeisance like a stick, or like they call with the knees down, kind of the arms like a turtle kind of a position, right? And I was like, how does it feel for a person that I see to bow to another person like that? Like, how does it feel? But I was embarrassed to do in front, like I was not part of them, right? And so I went like far, like distance away. I hide myself behind a tree, and I bow to that person. And when I bow, like something clicked.
It felt good.
I was like, that's really weird. Like, but it felt like, something opened up. Like almost like my heart was open to receive something, what they have to offer, right? And so this was kind of my first introduction towards opening myself up to the philosophy and lifestyle. And that year I traveled Belarus, Ukraine, Black Sea. I missed 1 month of school. My parents, turned gray. You know, it's heartbreaking. breaking it if I, contemplate
it.
right now as an adult, right? But I couldn't stop, something, there was a force beyond me, pushed me out of place where I grew up, right? And to hang out with people. And unfortunately, you know, um, I was taken care of by, even though like there was weird situation when you hitchhike, but I felt like I was taken care of. I'm going the right direction. And that,
How did you guys eat? How did you guys have money for food?
you know, um, so when I started hanging out with those hippies, first of all, like when I was hanging out with the, with the crew from my city or closest cities where I'm from, we had a guitar. We play punk songs in streets, and we put a hut. Like whatever money that comes, we just use that for food, right? But when I joined those hippies, we also um, one of the ways we've been fed is we used to go to a temple to temple in those cities, and they give free food, right? But another thing that they taught me is like um, when you travel, if you get charity, if you get people give you like let's say 3 apples, make sure that you only have what you need and give that to others. And like
Interesting.
as you know as we travel, and one thing like someone always gives, like they see like they see us. I was 14, so I was a kid. They see like, oh, how you travel. Like, as soon as they hear the story, they want to, like just people are generally good, like. And I know it's like there's the back thought. Oh man, it's like like you kind of, like you can be judged as like a parasite in society, right? Like you don't do anything. But to be, I mean, this is what it was. It's like we went different places, and whoever welcomes us and feeds us, we are grateful, and sometimes there was no food, like I mean, like day two, no food. I mean, it was just life was so rich of events and people, it was not even
It's interesting.
a priority.
It's like real nature, right? In
Yeah.
nature, that's how it is.
And when you also go village to village, when you hitchhike, you and I meet a really simple but like sweetest people, no matter where you are. It's like they don't see you as who you are, where you from, right? Like they just see you a kid,
Yeah.
or like a traveler or person whom they can share something, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so that was kind of yeah.
How did you end up in the monastery?
So that year,
Committing to
yeah.
to becoming.
So that year when I was traveling with the hippies, with the elderly, couples, right? Rainbow gathering, different.
They were older. Those
Yeah, they're
guys.
like in their,
20s.
20s. Some of them, late teenage years, 20s, 25, things like that. The person whom I traveled in my 14s, he was 31. But and he didn't want to deal with me because like who wants to deal with kids, right? Like he was adult, traveling himself.
Yeah.
But the great thing about, like, I had longer hair, piercing, and people thought I'm a girl, right? And I get always a car. Like every time I raise my hand, I get a car. And he looked like kind of like a gypsy looking, like poncho, and like those bell bottom jeans. This is how you call it, right? Like bell.
Sure. Yeah.
Like dreadlocks.
Maybe not as trustworthy as,
yeah,
as,
like
as
people,
you.
people didn't trust him, kind of a thing. But for me, like I always get a car, so he's like, okay, let's partner up, and it was safer for me in a way because he can pretend that he's my uncle. Like if there's police and things like that, it's like there's a little bit easy to
Move around.
yeah. But that year, so somehow, as soon as that event happened, right, like in Vladimir, where I bowed to this Swami, I didn't know anything about him or what it is. I just wanted to experience what they experience, those monks or the community members there, right? Um, that entire 4 months, like I start seeing them. It's like, it's not like I want intentionally to see those monks, but they start somehow appearing in different cities. We start meeting them. Even there was a time when I was hitchhiking from Kharkiv to Crimea, and we're in Melitopol. There's a city. It's like, and in Melitopol there was, when we stop a car, someone, the person who stopped, he was shave head. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to this city. He was the part of that community, of that Hindu community, right? And like, so people start coming to my life in a such a way that bringing the same message of Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, meditation. It was just like again and again, right? And it
was calling you.
Yeah, it was like, in my curiosity started growing.
Yeah.
But when I came back to my city, obviously the way how I was looking after being in rainbow gatherings, hanging with hippies, I had like, beads all over me, and with the kids whom I used to hang out, like tight jeans, leather, and like they
completely
look different, right?
Yeah.
And they look at me. I was like, what happened to you? But when I came back, my mind, my heart was already setting myself up. I want to be a student of this discipline, and I stopped, hanging out with kids who drink, smoke weed, and I kind of, when I came back to my city, this is what I want to do. I want to kind of create isolation and focus on studying text and meditating, right? But after like few months, I got lonely and I went back to hang out with the kids from my hometown, right? And back to punk shows and back to drinking, this is what we did, right? But I noticed that every time I get intoxicated, right? Either it's alcohol or weed, my heart gets so depressed and heavy, like, and every single party I was just crying. I don't know why. It's like, and then after sometimes people get sick of you, it's like, what is this, But I was crying and contemplating, like, I need to get out of my situation and get to a more favorable situation to be a student of this discipline. So on my ninth grade, the closest temple was 200 kilometers away, and I started basically preparing myself if I could go to a college in that town, and I start, I choose painting to go to study, and I started, every day I was drawing, try to like, see, like train myself basically if I can be accepted to that college. But in my mind, I was actually thinking temple. I just need a reason for my parents to let me go to the temple. But when I had a sprint break and I went to the temple, they told me I can stay there if my parents would let me. They need, to come, and they need permission and things like that. So basically, by the end of that school year, I kind of convinced my dad, that I'll try that college. But actually, in my mind, I was thinking I need to go to the temple. And for that entire summer, after my ninth grade, I spent that entire summer in a temple. But in order for me to leave, I need to provide permission that
from your parents,
writing a permission. So my dad remarried then, and my mother-in-law really wanted to get my favor, because I was the oldest son. She felt a little bit awkward, and my dad went for like a business trip, and this is the time when I asked her, "Can you write me a permission?" And she did it to gain my favor, but I don't think so. I don't know. Like, anyway, she
it
did
happened.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did it, and I.
You kind of went to the side.
I knew what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I was like straightforward, like try to manipulate situation.
And she didn't really know the situation fully.
Yeah.
Probably.
So I got the permission, and I showed, and they let me to stay and finish my high school in that city, in the temple. This is how I kind of moved in.
Yeah. So I remember our first podcast we did.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and I'm learning now too. From a monk, right, perspective, what you did, why you do it, and the similarities with jiu-jitsu and martial arts. Not even just jiu-jitsu, but the way of like martial arts.
Yeah.
With the bowing and the respect and why we do things, right?
Yeah.
I remember, you telling the story of your routine, your daily routine. You would get up like at 2:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah, it's like 2:33, and but
start meditating, right?
Yeah.
And then you wanna tell the story a little bit, like
Yeah.
your daily routine. There's like we were talking about yesterday about the influencers, right? The guys, I forgot it. What's his name? The guy that Damon was talking about. Ashton Hall. He was like 2:20, 2:23. I'm doing this. 2:20, 34, 2:36. I'm doing this. 2:38. I'm doing this. So like just not like that, but you would get up at 2:33, and you would start to meditate, and then you would do that for how long, and then what would you do after that? Your schedule, your daily schedule.
So when I joined the temple,
and you were still so young, right? You were 14.
Yeah. Oh, the first interesting how the first time when I asked if I can stay in the temple like president or the temple leader, right? And he said, "You're too young, right? You can't stay." But someone in the community heard that I expressed the desire to stay, and they had apartment next to the temple. So they actually invited me to. They said you can stay in the temple. You can stay in our apartment and attend a temple program, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I remember, it's like when I started doing the program, I was, so the way how program starts in the morning, it usually everything centers around the deities of the temple, right? And
the duties of the temple.
The deities, it's like the statues of the deities of the temple, right? So you wake up and you greet them, and then you do different prayers that awakens gratitude in you towards your teachers, traditions, right? Towards towards things that you do now, kind of a thing, right? And I remember like when the communal practice, it was a little bit easier because it's everyone sing, dance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there was right after that, there's a 2 hours, 1.5 hour, 2 hours window when you do your private practice, private meditation. And this is when I found it was a little bit harder. Like I remember in the beginning, even though I was so passionate to be part of what those community members and monks do at the temple, but when it comes to private practice, I was falling asleep. I couldn't, but and I remember the elders in the community, they're like, go and take a rest.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, no, I want to be part of it. So what basically, again, you wake up and there's a program that's set, right? Like, let's say like from 4:30 to 9 o'clock, it's a reach program. And usually people just do it together, right? But some people, for example, some monks, they wake up much earlier than that set up program, right? And what they usually do, it's like they do either private meditation or studying scriptures.
Okay.
And so basically when we wake up, we do that setup program, which is a little bit easy again, because it's a communal practice, right? We sing, we chant mantras, we contemplate, we recite scriptural text, and
you start at 3. 2:33.
2:33. Some places the program starts at 4:15, 4:30.
Gotcha.
So you just wake up before to take a shower,
Mm-hmm.
to get ready, or you wake up to do your practices.
And how many hours do you do that
So
first part?
let's say program starts 4:15, communal
Mm-hmm.
program, right? And by 5:15 it's done, and then we do individual practice, mantra meditation for a few hours, and then from 7:15 or 7:30 there's another communal program.
Mantra meditation. So you get a mantra in your head and you say it over and over and over.
So we use beats. We call it like a japa meditation.
Beats.
Yeah, we use beats, and it's a 108 beats, and we recite mantra on every beat. So, for example, one of the mantras that we recite is Hare Krishna mantra. So it's like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. One beat. So you go for a second beat, and it's a one round. It's a 100.
What is that? What does that mean? That
that mantra.
yeah.
So within the Hinduism, basically, it kind of brings all various traditions, right? Like sometimes people say Hinduism, but what it really means, it's bunch of traditions, and some of them theistic and some of them atheistic, right? Like some of them atheists, right? And so some monks, they could be in a way atheist, right? And then some monks, they theist, right? Like they believe
Taoist
in God. They believe in God, right? But within the community of theists, or they call, within community of people who believe in God, they also have different people who how they describe God, right? So, for example, Hare Krishna mantra, it's a name of God, right? Krishna is, like one of the gods, right? And so Hare, basically, one of the basic translation, mantra, what mantra actually means, mind, try to cleanse. So
to clean.
So you chant mantra to cleanse your mind. There's in our tradition there was
if you're like competing stuff, you say I put mantras in my head and say it over and over and over to get like in the zone, to get in the present and focus on what I want, right?
In a way, yeah. Because
that's what I would do.
Yeah, ultimately, when you chant mantra, like what you
intention, you get your intention pure and you focus on it.
Yeah.
Make it a reality.
What you chant when you chant mantra, there's two things that, right? Like you focus in the sound, and you're mindful of you're focusing on the sound, right? And then also a meaning, contemplation, right? Like what that Krishna, Ram, Hare means, right? In a way, it says that first it's sound, then when you contemplate or meditate on sound, then you start understanding qualities of that name, right? And then after qualities, you understand the form. So because sound has form, and form qualities, right? And then the last is you understand, you enter into the realm of that sound, right? And so basically,
so you go through all the beads, and you that's the do that.
And
so individual practice.
Yeah, and it takes the minimum amount of rounds. We did 16 rounds. It's like a minimum amount.
How long would that take?
It's about 2 hours. Some people, they could finish in 1 hour, 1.5 hour. But for me personally, it was like about 2 hours.
Okay.
And again, so mantra, there's a beautiful.
Go ahead.
There was a beautiful teacher who describes, like in his poetry, and he said, Chetu Darpanam Marjanam Bhavama Hadvagni Nirvapanam, and said, Chetu Darpanam, he said, our consciousness is like a mirror.
Like a mirror?
Like a mirror. And if mirror is dirty, you're not able to see your true reflection. And And if so you're not able to see your true reflection, and you're not able to reflect true picture of the world. You will see world, or you will see yourself based on the dust on that mirror. So in mantra meditation, basically it's a practice to cleanse the mirror, so that you're able to give a true sense of yourself and true sense of the world, right? Because the idea is that we see world not as it is, but we see world how our mind is, right? Like, for example, if I would be agitated and angry, right, frustrated, like, I will see you, myself, world through those qualities, right? So mantra meditation, basically, it's first of all, it's a way to purify, cleanse, right? And then also to protect yourself from the influences of the world, right? Like, either, just, interactions, daily interactions of the world. Because, some people say it's like, we are what we eat, but we're not just eating with our mouths, but we eat with our eyes, ears,
all our senses.
All our senses, right?
Smell,
we
feel.
consume the world, right? And the objects of this world carries certain energy, and when we interact, it influences our mind. It literally shapes our mind the way how those objects are, right? And so, and when we chant that mantra, obviously it becomes cleansing your mind, cleansing your heart, right? Protecting yourself, but also it's about connecting yourself with higher spirit, right? And obviously it's a huge topic. How certain theists or transcendentalists, they say spirit is all pervading and that's it, right? Some they say that all pervading spirit and localized in our own heart, in our own it's really individual. And some they say it's a personal God, right? Like, so it's a huge topic, right? But basically, through
you're tapping into energy, becoming one with the energy. Things
also,
that we can't see, right? Can only see certain things with our eyes.
Yeah, there's a concept like individual and universal, right? And sometimes individual, we small, literally, like we really small, right?
We are really small. Yeah.
But if you type into the universal, we become part of greater,
bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And then it truly fulfills our kind of a purpose, it's like being part of
something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. So basically this was the program, right? Like, and of course I can go into the details of it. It's I remember when like just before going to sleep, I was thinking, like I want to wake up and repeat this over again. It's like it almost feels like I don't even want to sleep. I just want to repeat that over again. Skip entire night and just go for that program. But yeah,
so after the personal practice, what's next?
So
start doing yoga, something like that. Some moving thing.
We had also a philosophical class every day, like public for everyone, right? Like from 8 to 9 usually, and we going through different scriptures. Usually, like in the morning we studied texts called Srimad Bhagavatam Purana, which is full of stories and philosophical. Full of wisdom, right? And so 8 to 9 and 9, usually most of the temples that I've been 9, usually it's a breakfast time, but in a temple that left a huge impression on me, where I was about 3 years, there was a lot of monks did yoga. So instead of eating breakfast, we went to the room, and like 15, 20 of us, we did, asana practice. And sometimes we had teachers to come and teach us, sometimes some community member come and teach. Sometimes we just, what we know, kind of like, so it's about, let's say 1 hour. And then we had more, like a little time to like wash our clothes and stuff. And, like we had literally like, as a monks, we had only like one locker. Whatever you can fit into this little closet, that's your possessions. It's like And so we had, you know, 2 sets of clothes. You know, usually this is the time to wash the clothes, right? And then from 11 to 12 we had a philosophical class only for monks, and we basically studied Sanskrit there and studied philosophy and kind of a thing. And then I think it's like 11:30 to 12:30, something like that. And 1 o'clock is lunch. But I want to actually kind of like share this moment of lunchtime. Even, you know, there's other moments to share, but lunchtime, I remember, of course, some monks serve other monks the food, right? But um, all the monks sit quietly, and they start before they, because there's a language that they use commonly. They're not just eating food; they honoring food. Like they see food is not just to, you know, like to enjoy, but food is extension of mercy from God, right? Kind of a thing. So they see food is not just a physical nourishment, but also a spiritual nourishment. So they train you to quieten down, and there's no one talks. There was a monk who reads, you know, something, and everyone listen and just eat slow. And another beautiful thing that if there's an elderly monk who is the leader of the community sits with us, no one stands before he stands. You know, there's that kind of a even if you finish, you sit.
Yeah.
You know, you sit quiet. You know, you enjoy the atmosphere, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like those little moments, it's like such a important impressions that I treasure. You know, and that that the focus, the intention, that it's not just let me stuff myself, right?
Because things happen in your body, right? Neuroscience and everything else, right? Where it shows you, right?
Yeah.
When you're eating with other people, you know, the mood, everything. It affects how your body takes the food and how
Yeah.
you digest it and everything else.
Yeah. It was just, you know, it was beautiful. It's like
Yeah.
I like those moments. I definitely, because those memories they bring, you know, peace, you know, like calmness and also inspiration when it needed in times of, you know, challenging times, right? But after lunch, we had different services to the community. Some of us, you know, some monks we just taking care of the
community
temple.
service.
Yeah, some of us we took care of the temple, right? Some of us went and teach, and some of us, you know, all kinds of services,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, you know, and then in the evening we usually, you know, again studying, chanting, and then go to sleep, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So the meditating and then community service. That's the
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, it's all about like tapping into the bigger source, energy, right? Becoming one with those things, right? All these practices.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we were talking on the mat, me, you, and Aaron, right? And we were talking about the pyramids, right? And those things that they found under the pyramids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those rods and how it goes like a mile deep or however deep it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I remember when I watched this documentary about pyramids like a long time ago. I don't even know the name, but it struck me, you know, and confirmed something that I kind of already knew, that there's amazing research and discoveries been done, and it's happening more and more, right? People getting so much more about the
Yeah.
you know, the mysticism and also practicality of things, right? Like what it's made for, right? But something I remember, I had a thought that when I was watching the documentary, I had this thought that there's two streams of knowing something, and one is that the tradition that by local people, you know, they pass through stories, you know,
Yeah.
generation after generation, and of course there's a modern science research and you know, the Western kind of a outlook on everything, and it made me think about just like there's always, and sometimes they come together and they win with each other, but sometimes they're quite far apart, you know. But and I'm not saying that, you know, like Western approach to study what it is bad, but what I remember when I saw that, my thoughts, right? Like I kind of enjoying the story of the people who are live there.
Like in Egypt. for
Yeah, like
example.
their tradition, their you know, grandparents, great grandparents.
Yeah.
You know, tell. You know what I mean? And it's like it's almost like a two different schools, right?
Yeah. So did you in the documentary they interviewed some like locals?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Like, you know.
And what did they say? What were they saying?
I don't remember exactly what it was, right? But I kind of had this impression. It's like, because for example, it's not just pyramids of Egypt, right?
Right,
Like
right.
it's all over the world, right? Like, and of course for me personally, India was
Right.
a place where I got attracted as a teenager, and it, you know, my life brought me to India. And
What's the history of, you know, the temple and the monk being a monk, right? The monks. What is the history? How long can you trace it back?
you know, so one of
The
the
tradition.
texts that again, there's two different opinions, right? Like the Western scholars, they have their own principles of studying things, right?
What do they say? The Western.
You know, obviously, it's like when you study inner tradition, they say, like for example, they say Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago, right? There's some text being spoken even or before that. Like there's it. They literally like they teach certain stories that happened thousands of years ago. And within the text, for example, there's a reference, like there's a personality, his name is Brahma, and Brahma, he considered to be a creator of this particular universe, right? And he has four heads, and he before start creating, he meditated for 10,000 years. You know, when you hear things like 10,000, like, you know what I mean? It's like our experience of life can feed into how they describe time, you know?
Right. What is Western? What do they say? How many years can you trace back? You know, the tradition, the monk tradition.
So, you know, I can't really exactly right now tell you like
It's like
the numbers and
random,
stuff.
right? Yeah, of course.
But it's
overall, right?
yeah, it's usually
thousands of years, but how many thousands of
you know,
years is
they
the question?
usually like kind of. It's hard to open up for something
Because
much,
they say like Jiu-Jitsu was a practice of like Buddhist monks. So the tradition kind of traces back to that, how it began.
Yeah. And like, see, it's like when you hear this different information, and again, like I can't speak right now from perspective of Western science and scientists, right? And but one thing for me personally, when you know, for me personally. Like when I heard like Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago, I accept it as it. You know what I mean? It's that's it. You know, it's like I my mind.
But
not
you know,
necessarily.
the smartest people in the world, right? They say we think, but we don't know, right? So who knows what it is? It's just, you know, it's somebody saying it. Okay, it could be, but it also could not be. And it's so much of it in our mind, right? Our perception of things, of reality.
Yeah.
So you know, who knows what's right and what's wrong? But you know. So thousands of years, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, who knows? But it's ancient, for sure.
And I accepted that as it is, you know, like because, and of course, some people need stronger foundation for them to accept something. But I'm not necessarily. My mind doesn't necessarily work like that. I don't necessarily need to conform that 5,000 years happen for sure
The interesting,
to get the
the
benefit
interesting thing
of
is we
that.
feel things, right? Like
Yeah.
more than we can see with our eyes, but we feel things in our body, right?
Yeah.
If things are right or if they're wrong.
Yeah.
And but we don't know, right?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah,
So you have
yeah.
to be humble and
Yeah.
and
Because
Yeah.
see, it's like for sure there's like there's a different ways to acquire the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Like one way is to acquire the knowledge, the empirical ways, right? Like through senses, what we
Right,
see,
right.
what we get, right? The second one, the logic, right? Like we see, we think, we try to reason and so on. And third one is we hear from someone, right? But there's another ways to understand something, and that process they call you understand through trance when you get into a trance, right? Like your consciousness, your frequency of your consciousness in a different level. So your way of understanding will be not as gross as just what you see, what you
Right,
get, kind of a
right,
thing, right?
right.
So, for example, like when you like read ancient texts on herbal medicine, for example, how they would know how this particular medicine will affect your body this way, that way, when they didn't have big laboratories to study those herbs and things like that, right? And one of the
It's like these random things go into our brain, right?
and-
From a higher power. Or
and yeah, one of the ways they explain, right? Like they able to get into deep states of meditation and become one with the plant. And when we become one with the plant, they almost scan that information and write in manuscripts, right? Like if it or write in the paper, right?
Yeah.
Right now, so it's kind of it's like there's a different ways to know,
Right.
and some people again are much more scientific and they need like those like concrete
Right.
numbers and dates and yes this happened then and but for me like personally my mind doesn't work that way, like I'm more attracted to feelings,
Being present, feeling.
rather than information. You know what I mean? It's like, and yeah.
Nice. Last question. Is jiu-jitsu meditation?
Yeah, it's interesting the way how you said it, because recently I heard a friend of mine, he said he went to one of the gyms somewhere in Los Angeles, and that gym doesn't have much pictures. They don't bow, they don't have necessarily culture. It's like most of the gyms they have, right? And I kind of see what they want, to not exclude anyone and to bring the community together and just like we study jiu-jitsu, this is what matters, right? But I also was thinking about like what we do in a regular basis. We shake our hands before, after, in the middle, right? We take our shoes off, we step on the mat, we bow, and I feel like even though for people who didn't grow up in this kind of a culture, what it does, that repetitive ritual helps slowly to direct your thoughts certain way, and the result of that repetitive ritual is to respect, ultimately. That so it's like where you cultivate deeper sense of respect, not to just physical body, which is where we start, right? But also ultimately to respect the spirit. And I feel like martial arts ultimately come from a contemplative lineages. Of course, we also know big egos in martial arts and people who didn't care at all about a spirit and and ancient wisdom and so things like that. But at least we can trace like the lineage where martial art comes from. There's a contemplative traditions, right? Like where they believe that you're not just physical body, you're not just even your mind, but your spirit. and spirit never dies, right? So and and I, and of course to come to that conclusion, it takes a little bit more than just roll on the mat. But at least the culture comes from that.
Yeah.
Like in a regular basis, if you bow, if you you know intentionally concern how you doing, how you good training, right? Like this is what we say, right? It's like how you feeling, it's like how are you,
Serve others.
yeah,
Help,
like
help
good
each
training,
other.
thank you, right? Like all this in a regular basis, they set our mind to frequency that inevitably will respect at life in various forms, not just people who comes on the mud, but outside of the mud, hopefully too, right? And again, I I can't really say for everyone, right? Like what how, because we also know people who does martial art for many years, they may not even think about those things, and they may not be even good people right? Like that's
Yeah,
possible too.
yeah.
So I'm not saying that just by doing that it will lead towards that, but at least the way how my mind trained from having my background, like
Right.
I see value in that, like bowing, showing respect to elders, showing respect to people who know, more than us. Natural hierarchy, I think it's those principles are important, and I think in the culture that we live right now, it kind of becomes blended, like, where like for example, when I was a kid, like if teacher comes to the classroom, we all stand up right away. We're not allowed to wear hats. Like we stand up from our chairs to greet the teacher coming into the room. And I feel like it becomes less and less. People don't respect elders. People don't respect people who are below them. Because there's also there's a need that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it kind of becomes blended, and kind of get lost in a way.
It helps us to be better people, to tap into the however you want to say it, right? To a higher frequency or a higher self.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's important to
Yeah.
these things are good because they remind us, right,
Yeah.
of these things that help us be
yeah.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. Like for example, you see like Thai fighters, right? Like, and of course, not just Thai fighters, but um,
They do
when
the white they do the white crew,
yeah, or
the,
like
the dance before the fight
or
to
the bow after, right? Like
to give gratitude to their teachers, right?
yeah, yeah, or the bow after the fight, right? Like
Right.
and
Thanking their opponents
and I'm sure, like I never been in a situation where I was beaten up by someone and someone bows to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how it feels, right? But at least as a spectator, it feels like that's really cool, like yesterday, even like one of the Russell, right? Like
Russell.
he came out and it was
yeah.
out of nowhere, like was what's happening, but then he recognized that, oh, I did something to one person, but it may create a vibration that distrust from the community of practitioners, right? And it was beautiful. He recognized and apologized to everyone else, right? And like that moment, maybe for some people is come on, like let's finish and go,
Yeah.
right? But and I'm sure like out of all of us, some of us got impressed and touched
Yeah.
by the gesture, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, again, it's like of course, yoga deals directly with philosophical principles, right? Like, and when you practice physical exercises, um, there's right away breath, there's right away psychology, there's you can get a little bit into philosophical concept and contemplations, right? In jiu-jitsu, for me it's a little bit different. It's like I definitely think that it's also meditative practice for me, but it's slightly different. It's like
Different but the same.
Yeah, but I definitely could say that I I practice mindfulness. I practice concentration, right? Like I practice uh, watching my mind and how my mind affects my breathing and things like that. Uh, right in those 5 minutes, whatever, right? Sparring we have, those things are there. You know, sometimes, of course, you become overly passionate.
Right.
You know, you forget mindfulness. You just become your body. You become your passion. You become your arms. You become your legs. But time to time, it's like, oh no, just chill, breathe, relax. So you start see yourself from outside, and I think that quality or that element of our intellect is really really important, and most of the meditative practices supposed to lead to that. For example, Buddha, what Buddha means, right? Like one of the Sanskrit word um, that lines up with Buddha is Buddhi. And Buddhi, they describe it's an element of one of the qualities of Buddha, its ability to see yourself from outside. Like be able to see our thoughts, feelings, our body, situation around us. And so meditative practice is supposed to lead to that quality. It's like you have to come to that in order to go a little bit further, kind of a thing, right? It's like, and I think, but see, it's like, again, I can't speak for everyone, right? Like because I have my mind trained philosophically, so everything becomes kind of connected to that philosophical concept.
That's why it's interesting for me to talk to you about it. It's interesting for me, you know. So
so yeah, you know.
It's
So
awesome.
in that way, like jiu-jitsu actually, you know, another thing jiu-jitsu help. Like I'm really shy person, you know. It's like, and I didn't want to, like, it was hard for me to step into a gym by myself, make friends, you know, and you know, and that era when I was about to step into the gym, it was era of like Conor McGregor. He was big then, you know, and you know, like I thought like if I'll step in the gym, I have to deal with those kind of people, you know. I was literally like not looking for.
I mean, you're not the only one, right? People. That's why it's important for us to take care of the new people, because new people come in and they don't know what to expect, and some people a lot of people expect that, right? It's a UFC or something like this.
But when I step in, you know, Marco took care of me, you know, like, and the other guys, you know, like some of them still here, some of them, you know, like different gyms, but or affiliated gyms, right? And but it was, you know, I think jiu-jitsu what also gave me that, you know, like a sense of confidence in a way, you know, like which is important in a world to interact, right? Like that sense of like I can, you know, I'm not usually like a talker, like short talker. How do you say that? Like short conversation kind of a thing. It's hard for me to like, you know, like when I came to the United States, someone asked me, it's like, how are you doing? And I thought they really want to know how I'm doing. So I start telling them, they like look at me like, I'm not asking you how you're really doing. So those short conversation is like a little bit, you know, I get awkward and, you know, but I think in jiu-jitsu definitely helped me as well to feel a little bit less of that and to feel a little bit more, you know, confident.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you choke someone who is bigger than you or armbar them, top them, like, yeah, I can do this. You know, that's definitely
awesome.
Another thing that I gain.
Awesome.
And you know, also community of people who just real, you know, that's sometimes, you know, sometimes in my community, you know, sometimes I felt like, you know, because spirituality, you can hide yourself sometimes, you know, like you can be easily, you know, pretend spiritual and, you know, but hide all the problems and, you know, all the stuff that you have in your heart and your mind. And but here, you know, in jiu-jitsu, I'm not saying that everyone's the same, but I find people just real, you know, not pretentious, and you know, they are as they are, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to hide, right? When you're choking somebody or getting choked by somebody, you are who you are.
Yeah, and
on the mats,
and it kind of, you know, it creates a sense of like I'm relaxed, you know, like I don't need to pretend, you know, to be someone, you know, or to impress even anyone, you know, like I'm just there to train and learn and you know, hopefully get better and better little by little. Yeah.
That's it. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your experience with things and how it connects to jiu-jitsu. I appreciate you. I appreciate your coaching. Appreciate you as a person, and look forward to the future.
Appreciate you. You know, I definitely, you know, it's like, you know, like when about choosing the gym, right? It's like, I definitely felt like it was the right introduction, you know, to jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, right? Like here. So I'm grateful for that as well, you know. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.